Hi, and welcome to CMO Journeys. I'm Banach, and on this show, I talk with the marketing leaders behind some of today's most interesting brands. We get into their career paths, how they think about marketing, and how they work with agencies. Today, my guest is Esi Eggleston Bracey, a longtime growth and marketing executive with leadership experience across Procter Gamble, Coty, and Unilever, where she most recently helped shape growth and marketing at a global scale. Named by Forbes as one of the world's most influential CMOs, she's now heading to Possible to lead a timely conversation around one of the biggest questions in marketing right now. As AI changes how brands build and buy, where do agencies still create irreplaceable value? Esi, welcome to CMO Journeys.
Thank you. My pleasure to talk with you.
So this is CMO Journeys, and we like to start at the very beginning of your journey. So tell us a little bit about where'd you grow up? What type of kid were you?
Oh, you're going way back.
Way back.
I'm originally from Chicago. I love numbers. Like math was my favorite thing. I would beg my friends to do their math homework. I was curious. I was precocious. I was active. I was a gymnast. And so I consider myself an accidental executive. My mother was a lawyer. As a lawyer, a bit of a civil rights activist, and that she did cases for the underserved, women who couldn't afford divorces, other discrimination cases, but really a broad range of underserved people. And my father was a math teacher. So I never had a role model for marketing. I didn't know what that was, business, general management, brand management. And had planned to be a biomedical engineering, a double doctor, an MD, PhD in biomedical engineering, because I read about it as something that very few women did, and certainly not Black women. So that's a big goal. I like numbers and I like people, so I want to do that. And here I am in business and marketing. And so I consider myself an accidental executive.
Yeah, I love that. So what made you first realize you were not just good at marketing, but you saw growth and brand building differently than other people?
Marketing for me is really all about helping people, understanding what they need, and coming up with solutions that meet those needs and desires. And then it's helping business. Yeah, for business, it's helping business. It's helping create desire or demand for the thing that you're selling. And so what marketing does is bring those together. You help people by giving them what they need, and you help business by connecting people and creating desire for what the business is selling to create value for that business. And so I realized that what I love to do was that. I love problem solving. I mentioned I love math. And then I love people, curious, digging deep, figure out those insights. And then I learned I like to create propositions. So I've always enjoyed that. When I realized that I could do that through marketing was when I started my first job at P&G. And probably a few years into it, I realized, wow, this matches all of my passions, and that just grew. So when literally, that was probably back in the early 90s.
Sure. Was there a specific brand or campaign or really that was that light bulb moment?
That's an interesting question. There's so many of those. So I would say it built to that, but because you wanted to go way back, I'm going to share a very early one with you.
Please.
I was the brand assistant on something called Comet. Do you know Comet Cleanser?
Comet, the cleanser. It's like a powder, right?
Yes. So
Yes.
when I was a pup, 95% of Americans had Comet Cleanser under their sink and used it to clean their sink tops. And to keep the powder from coming out, there was something called a tear tape that you would literally use to tape so that it wouldn't get wet. And that the supplier for the tear tape, for some reason, wanted to talk to me about tear tapes. And I was the brand assistant on the business. And I remember saying to him, can you print this in color? And can you do pictures? Can you put a picture of our new product, Comet Bathroom Spray, on this tear tape? And it wasn't a plan. It was just through osmosis, just connecting with someone, hearing what they could do and giving them a challenge. So we ended up doing that. And we were already paying for this tear tape, and putting it in 5-color didn't even change the cost. When we launched the Comet bathroom spray, it ended up being the number one driver of awareness was that tear tape. And I wasn't even really assigned to that initiative. That was a aha moment. I mean, it accounted for 65% of the awareness of the bathroom spray because it had such penetration. So it was the beginning of, wow, you can make a difference with some focus, creativity, and a little analysis, right? The problem, how do we create trial when we don't have a big budget? And it wasn't even my project. It wasn't even my problem, but I saw the opportunity. So that was one of the early ones that I can remember making a big difference. And that was a big deal because it was the number one priority for our whole category at the time. And then other things just kept showing that. The launch of Febreze, I had the opportunity as an assistant brand manager to develop Febreze, at the time Fabric Refresher, which is now a freshening portfolio of products that P&G has. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. And I look back at a young age, and that was just, again, based on understanding people and what their needs were, and then understanding different ways to solve them, and then what the business needed. Business needed to expand beyond fabric softening to help deliver our year 2000 goals at the time. People needed a way to feel comfortable in their homes, especially small homes. If there's smoke, odors, and pets, anything with odors, you'd spray over it with a traditional air spray and air freshener. And in fact, odors are trapped in fabrics, your sofas, your upholstery, and you're never comfortable. And there was a technology, cyclodextrin, that could literally trap odors. And my own personal insight, I was young and I would go to bars and I'd have blazers that I just dry cleaned, and I'd go to a bar for a second and I couldn't wear them again after dry clean them. So the idea of not knowing how to clean, hard to clean fabrics, or not wanting to invest in them, and then creating Febreze and looking at what it is today. That was another aha moment. This really makes a difference for people. And I can go on and on about those moments. CoverGirl, seeing that people didn't feel seen in beauty because of the narrow beauty standards, and listening to that and coming up with a solution that still created aspiration, but belief that you could be beautiful by bringing CoverGirls like Queen Latifah and Drew Barrymore and Pink, and at the time who were non-traditional beauties, along with innovation and watching the business transform. So aha moments along the way that has kept me in this industry for 35 years. And for me, I don't like to think about marketing as a function. Coming from CPG, I think about brands, and brands are the driver of growth, especially for CPG. You buy into buying a Dove. It's not just how it's marketed, it's the brand. And I think about what we do, creating desire for brands, and then channeling that desire into commerce, and with the right cost structure, creating a business. That's what I love to do. That's a problem solving. And what we call marketing is at the hub of that, but it's only possible in connecting that with multi-disciplines that bring the brand to life, the packaging to life, and all of the way that create desire for people, and that we have the whole infrastructure that bring that desire into real value for the enterprise.
Sure. Sounds like you have a very entrepreneurial brain. You may have worked inside of businesses, but maybe not started, your own business for that. But I hear the same types of things, that entrepreneur finds a problem and then figures out a way to solve it. So I love how you've done that. You've had a great career. You've highlighted some of the big aha moments. Was there ever a moment where you felt, I might not be fully ready for this yet? And what did it feel like in that moment? Where were those moments?
There have been so many of those moments. There have been so many of those moments. And if I think backwards, one of the biggest moments I can remember is leaving the US to go work in Geneva, Switzerland, to run the makeup business for Procter Gamble, and expecting my second child.
Oh.
That was, whoa, how am I going to do this? knowing I was expecting my second child also meant going on a maternity leave, having a young child, and moving into a new culture and running a business that's in 100 markets. So that was one. The second was when I left P&G and went to the real world, because P&G is promote from within. So you're always around other P&G colleagues. You don't have the exposure to working with other people's and ways of doing things. And at the time, you're a little bit protected. P&G kind of protects you from the P&L because there's so much corporate infrastructure. And so when I left P&G, that moment of, putting my big girl pants on and really running the business and competing, I'm saying it as compete, but I don't mean that, working with colleagues that come with different ways of working and perspectives. And that was going to Coty, being the president of the consumer beauty business, the first go round, and then going to Unilever with Unilever colleagues, but people from other businesses and industries. Like, okay, I don't know if I would say, am I ready? But like, okay, this is the next step. So how do I do this? I don't know. Let's just jump in and do it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's always when you make those transitions, it's scary. What was there some advice maybe that you got from a mentor or someone else that really helped you get through that, or that influenced you along the way?
I have had a number of wonderful mentors that have influenced me along the way. One that comes to mind, and I haven't spoken with her in a long time, is a woman named Susan Arnold, who was the woman who promoted me to general manager. That's another moment I was very nervous about when I actually moved from brand management into general management. Now that's 2 decades ago. She had a lot of confidence and faith in me, and that made the difference. But wonderful mentor. If I think about your question, what made a difference in those moments where I was expanding? And I think the biggest difference was made through mindset. And I have a set of leadership principles. I think every challenge is an opportunity for growth. And I've had a number of challenges, professional and personal challenges. And I look at those as what can I learn and how can I grow? Because I believe that's the purpose of life, is to have challenges guide your path so that you can grow and expand as a person. And so I've adapted some leadership principles. I have 5 of them, but one of them is say yes when you're scared and no when you're clear. And some of the most transformative moments for me are those ones that have been scary, like moving to Switzerland, I didn't speak French, so I took French class so that I could speak to the nurses. And having a family, spending time in Switzerland, have a family of 2, and spending 8 years at the time outside of the US, I've subsequently now spent more than 10, was the biggest gift and blessing to me and my family. And I've had that experience over and over again. So it's the mindset and approach, truly a growth mindset, personal growth, and then business expansion and growth. So I rely on those principles, those values.
And these are principles that you've developed, right?
Yes, I've developed through experience and through coaching and personal development and introspection. So I think of them as I've curated them. One is do you. It's your superpower. No one can do you better than you. I discovered that. Early on in my career, I tried to conform. I didn't know I was trying to conform. I thought it was like school. You figure out what you need to do do well in the class, and you observe and you learn. So work was that way. You look at the suits and what other people are doing, and that's what you should be. And I learned absolutely not. Do you? I can't do the dudes. I have to do me. Right? That's really important. Manage your energy, not just your time, because energy is not finite. It's infinite. So all the things that I do in life, I choose them intentionally about what gives me energy, because time is scarce. We all have 24 hours in a day. So that's really important. I say help people, not just consumers. As we're building brands, we often focus on that moment of consumption. If it's a food product, it's literally consumption. If it's a laundry product, it's how they're doing laundry. And the breakthroughs come in seeing a whole person and all the tensions in lives that you can solve. I've created those leadership principles based on various life lessons and things that energize me.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm big on personal development and growth, so this is music to my ears. I love this, and I love how you've plainly and very clearly explained, how it is. There's not a lot of corporate jargon. I just, you understand it right away. So I really appreciate that. Um, so you're speaking at Possible, and you've had a long career, and I'm curious, when you think back over that career, how has your view of agencies changed maybe from the early years to where it is today?
It's a good question. My role of agencies, how I've thought about the role and how it changed. I would answer that beyond agencies. As I think about my 35 years, I say everything and nothing has changed. The nothing is really important. The fundamentals of building brands are all about understanding people, as I said, creating desire for people, and then turning that desire into commerce. How? Through reach, engagement, and conversion. That's what we do. We create a proposition that's desirable, that uniquely delivers against that, and then we use the model. That has not changed. And the agency's role in helping create desire is still important. More important, I actually believe, than ever before, because the bar is raised on what it takes to cut through. But the fundamental role of what you have to do to build a brand, nothing stays the same. The everything else has changed. It's what tools you have to build the business, technology, people, and what we expect in our lives, our attention spans. So all we're doing is now trying to deliver the same thing with new tools in a new context. So you asked about agencies in that and why the talk, or it's not really a talk, what I'm facilitating is a conversation among marketing leaders. I don't have an answer to this question. It's exploring with everyone, where do we go from here? The role of agencies, the question is, how should it be changing? Just as you said, for irreplaceable value as the ecosystem has changed. And I think we've been more aware of how the ecosystem has changed and how marketing has changed than moving in lockstep with our agencies on what's needed. My experience, to answer that question myself, is the most irreplaceable value comes from ideas and creativity. In working in brand management and general management, the clients don't have that. The transformation of an idea that leads to a Vaseline verified, that is health, not hype, that leads to Dove, 20 years of real beauty and how it's executed. Beauty never gets old, or Let Them Talk, if you're executing that for Bridgerton or Girls Can. That comes from agencies, and we have to get that from agencies. But what we need are ideas that will travel and connect to culture, that idea is truly an idea and not an ad or a campaign. So it can change in others' voices. Brands say and others say is one example. And then the other thing that has changed is the ecosystem has become so complicated. I believe the marketer has to be the integrator. It's the owner of the data between commerce and media and innovation and creative ideas. So there's a lot that we have outsourced to different agencies. I don't think we can outsource that integration of data and how it connects, because we have to work in real time. So within that, there leaves other jobs to be done in support of the marketer that agencies can fulfill. Media strategy and planning, media execution, but we also need some of that know-how in-house. So that was a long answer. I think as the marketing ecosystem has changed, everything has changed and nothing has changed. And the same is true of the agency's role.
Yeah, yeah. A big theme of that talk that you have is around sustainable growth. So, I'm hearing marketers talk about cutting agency spend because of AI. What do you think? Are they underestimating about what it takes to actually grow? Is it that creativity and the integration? Is it something else?
That is kind of a summary thought, that we're cutting marketing investment and agency spin because of AI, it's much more granular than that.
Hmm.
I generally have experienced you cannot cut your way into growth. You have to invest in your unique value proposition that adds value, but you need to do that efficiently. I do believe there's waste in our system that can be done better, but that's different from cutting agency spin. A production or content that could cost $1 million in the old world could actually cost 100,000 or less, or an execution that cost hundreds of thousands could now cost hundreds. So there is productivity that we should expect, embrace from AI, but that doesn't mean cutting agency spend. The bigger question is, where does your agency add irreplaceable value for growth? Or even a better question is, what do you need to create irreplaceable value for growth? And who is best at doing that? And then in that, what do agencies do? My experience, it's those breakthrough creative ideas. Once you have a clear strategy, the agencies uniquely own that. They can support and help you with that strategy. Questioning the status quo. Agencies have done that beautifully for me. And then it's helping and supporting you and translating that all the way into commerce that is productive, the right places to invest. This piece of content works better on this platform than the other. Insights and intelligence and supporting you in doing that versus owning that. And I say support because it involves other pieces of data that the brand owners, in my opinion, uniquely own.
Yeah. It's an interesting time. Everybody is trying to figure it all out. I know a lot of agencies are scared, but I think there should be reassurance hearing what you just said if I'm an agency owner. But you need to evolve at the same time. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out.
Back to where we started, every challenge is an opportunity for growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And agencies that are doing well identified that growth opportunity in the challenge and where they can help and support. And that's true of all businesses. So it could seem from the topic of my talk, are agencies dead, that I'm not a fan of agencies. And it's actually the reverse. It's
Sure.
actually reverse. It's a provocation, but it's to force us to think on how we collectively add value for people, consumers, and for our business. And I'm confident agencies play a role, but we have to open our minds beyond the heritage roles we've played to deliver our bottom line, to add that unique value.
Yeah. Yeah. And agencies are the creative ones. They should be able to come up with this new ideas. So I'd love to see how this evolves over time.
Well said.
Yeah. So you've had some distance from Unilever now, and I'm curious, what's maybe something you would have approached differently if you were redesigning that growth model again today?
It's a question I haven't thought about. So my last day at Unilever was February 3rd. So it's just been about 2 months. And I probably feel more reassured by the growth strategy, which there are 2 elements of that. One was moving from the broadcast one-to-many marketing model to the many-to-many model. And the second was moving from function and need to desirability to add more experience. Those were the problems I was trying to address to unlock growth. If I think and answer your question differently of what's needed even more now is the agility to keep optimizing what that looks like as the technology advances and as people continue to evolve. So the communication of the many-to-many model is a social first demand generation strategy, because social is just the ecosystem that brings culture together at scale, because what you're solving for is broad reach for big brands, engagement and conversion. That's going to keep evolving and changing. And of course, one of the other things I mentioned too, there's a third that I really drove, was win the machines. If marketing was about winning hearts and minds in the past, today it's about winning people and machines. because machines are an important audience. I feel even more confident in that than ever before. And I think we need to continue our acumen in hacking machine science because it keeps changing. And I question, can we ever truly hack machine science as it's evolving? So the constant investing in what does it look like to win machines, which of course are algorithms, it's bots, but it's agentic commerce. And that agentic commerce, when your brand is not desirable, you have more of a chance of having that purchase relegated. So I'm more reflecting on your question because I hadn't thought about that than answer that. And my summary reflection is I'm more convinced, as if not more convinced, that we must transform the way we build brands for this new world. The many to many model is a critical part of that, or you will not hit reach. Desirability is an important part of that. And the machine ecosystem is important in that. And the agility that we need to not lose track of the big picture of what we're trying to solve and not to attach that execution as things change, it's probably even more important than I had seen.
Sure, sure. So as you think then what's next for yourself, what kind of problems or opportunities are most energizing to you?
What I've done is created a gap for myself where there is space.
Yeah.
You've heard people talk about a power pause and all that. I'm not pausing. I'm not in any kind of pause mode. I've created space and a gap for continued growth. And what I'm doing now is fully leaning into that. You know, I've spent the past couple of months recharging. I say every corporate athlete needs recovery. So I spend time in the south of Africa, in the Southern Cape, getting energized by nature. I was in Costa Rica and I did a wellness retreat. I was in Puerto Rico, was in London. And I've been doing industry conferences, connecting with people, getting stimulated, learning, growing. I've been active on boards that I'm on. So what's next is enjoying and maximizing this gap. And I have to figure out how long I want this gap to be. If it's 3 months, 1 year, 2 years. You know, I've been thinking about, someone I was talking to yesterday, many people have asked me to reflect and write a book, and I haven't really been that interested, but I've been thinking about it because it's a way to codify your belief system and share that with others. So what I'm energized by now, which was your question, is this gap. And in terms of what's next, I'm on a grand adventure to create what that is.
When are you going to know when you're ready?
I'll feel it. You know, someone asked me this, I was talking to them today. And they said, I see you as different in some ways than a lot of general managers or business executives because you embrace creativity and intuition, but you're really into the data and analysis. So that's present for me when you ask your question, how will I know? I'll feel it. I'll have the sign and signal, and then there'll be some data or evidence. It'll be an opportunity that I'm super excited about that meet all of my criteria. I will feel like I've exhausted this gap and it's time for a next challenge. So it'll be this mixture of head and heart, this intuition plus evidence.
Yeah.
That I'll
You'll
know.
feel it. You'll know it. You'll know it.
I'll
Yeah.
know. I really, and some people say, are you anxious about what you do? No, if I never have another job again, I'm good.
Sure.
You know, 35 years, you know, I feel very complete. I've never felt this way before. But with finishing the 8 years at Unilever, it's a level of completion and satisfaction that I feel. So anything I do next will be a choice beyond what I'm doing in this gap, because that's what I'm choosing right now.
Yeah. You mentioned a few things that you're doing in the gap. What else keeps you grounded or helps you reset when the stakes are high?
I think it's back to what I said earlier around leadership principles. I'm just grounded in who I am and in purpose. Who I am is not what I do. And I don't think I was always that person. You know, what I did was, I was so committed and passionate about it. that it became a part of who I was. And there was a point, probably in the past 10 years, where I had this distinction: I am not my results. And even further is, who I am is not what I do. I loan myself to my job. My job is not me. And in terms of this conversation, that keeps me very grounded. I don't have a sense of, if I'm not Unilever's Chief Growth and Marketing Officer, then who am I? I have no sense of that. I gave myself to that job and changed the way that job was done because of what I saw as a view. And so I get to choose to lend myself to anything else I'm doing. My kids, helping people. I'm on the Alvin Ailey board, which I enjoy, which is about dance. I'm, planning to take more dance class. That's what I'm choosing to lend myself to right now. So I would think that that keeps me grounded. And as I talked about the places that I've traveled to, a big part of that was with my family. South Africa was with my son, who is at a boarding school, so he has a long spring break, and with my husband, who's just recently been able to travel. So that was amazing. That keeps me grounded. Another one of my trips, when I had another board meeting, I'm on the board of Williams-Sonoma in San Francisco. I stayed over and visited my daughter in Palo Alto, who's in university, and got to spend some days with her in between her classes. That keeps me grounded. It's a reminder of who I am and what I'm committed to.
I think there's a book in your future. I don't know if it's happening in this gap or not, but I see a book, and I would be one of the first in line to read it. I love it.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
So we're winding things down, and I want to come back to one last question about the possible conference. The question on the table, as we mentioned, or you mentioned, it's our agency's dead, and you gave your perspective on that. But if you had to leave our audience with one more useful framing, what should they really be asking themselves instead?
What is needed to grow? And when I say what is needed to grow, it's what don't we have today that we need more of for sustained growth? That's the question. Then the second is, who plays what role in delivering that growth best? And by best, it's the highest degree of excellence and capability and the most productively. So you asked one question, but those were two. It's all about sustained growth and competitiveness. That's the question.
I love it. Esi, this has been amazing. Thanks again for the conversation and the insights. To everybody watching, don't forget to follow CMO Journeys for more conversations with the marketing leaders that are shaping what's next. I'm Christian Banach. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.